To welcome everyone back. I hope you had a good Pesach. Number two, we thank Susan Jerkowitz for sponsoring. It's Lili Nishmas, Jean's mother, Fendel Bas Zev, and the York side was on Shabbat. So the Neshama Shabbat Aliyah, we do thank you indeed. Next week I'm going to have to make an adjustment. Unfortunately, 11:50 a class. A shorter class, 40 minutes, less talking also. So 11:50 we start next week. We'll be in the bulletin. It's just I can't control everything. I control very little actually.
This is like the first day back after holidays at school.
Welcome everyone back. Okay, good morning. Parshas Kedoshim is on page 656. Rabbinic sources, Midrashim indicate that if you look carefully in this week's Parashah, Parshas Kedoshim, page 656, and you listen during the Kriyat Torah this Shabbat, as our co-president demands, you will find a reference to all of the Aseret HaDibrot. So think Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 sayings, also known as 10 commandments. Think about them, and you could go ahead and spot in this portion a reference to every single one. Keep your eyes open, right? You could do it. I should hand out a worksheet perhaps before Kriyas HaTorah and ask you all to keep your eyes open to do it, but no pens. Now, as we were preparing ourselves for that wonderful experience, the revelation and the hearing of those 10 sayings, the Almighty says, you know, you Jews, you're going to be a Mamlechet Kohanim and a Goy Kadosh. You're going to be a nation of priests. Meaning, Jews are going to be the educators, the priests to humanity. Right? We have a unique role. We're supposed to inspire the human race. But at the same time, you have to be, quote unquote, kadosh. You got to be holy. Jews, be holy. What does it mean to be holy? So we often make the mistake of comparing ourselves to the holy object. The holy object will be kept in the Aron Kodesh. It's not going to interact with society. It separates itself from everyone else. So perhaps that is what the Torah wants from us. Perhaps that is what we are being told as we prepare for that revelation. But that is not Kedusha. That is not Jewish sanctity of the person. You know, if you look at the Shemona Esrei, you look at the first 3 blessings. The first 3 brachot are in many ways considered like one. In those 3, we don't start asking for things yet. Right? It's like a smart teenager. They first come and start complimenting the parents, and then they say, "Okay, by the way, I need another $75 for who knows what." Right? Those were the good old days, you say. What's waiting for us? You say, okay. So we operate the same way with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. With the first 3 blessings, we're not asking for anything, right? You were the protector you were the shield of Abraham. You resuscitate the dead. You're a God of holiness. And then we go for it, right? Wisdom, right? Forgive us. Meaning, health, money, all the good things we start asking for. Now, those first 3 blessings actually can be linked to the 3 patriarchs. When the first one is shield of Abraham. The second one is talking about an entity of being a person who, in some ways, his life came to an end. He's laying there on the altar, bound. But his life is given to him back, and it's a different life, a new life, Yitzchak. And then we talk about the God who is Kadosh, who is holy. So we have no choice. We've got to link him to Yaakov Avinu. Now let's think about Yaakov Avinu. What do we know about him? Right? So let's take some 20 years out of his life. And he's a shepherd, right? Chasing the sheep, right? Think about doing it for 20 minutes, right? Out in the field there, right? a shepherd. Now, is that a holy person? Yes.
Something new, the spotted, speckled, and everything. They found sheep now in Israel that are spotted and speckled.
Okay, they're going to call Jacob sheep. They're going to probably call them or something like that. Yaakov Avinu interacts with the world. He's engaged. He's in the workplace. He's in the marketplace. He interacts, but that's holiness. Because holiness in Judaism is not separating yourself, but rather being engaged and using it appropriately. Using it with the recognition that there is a God, and that this God wants us to utilize and appreciate this world and be happy about the gifts. And that's how we make the world a holy place. And it's very clear when we make Kiddush. What do we use for Kiddush? We use the beverage that symbolizes physical pleasure more than anything else, more than scotch, and more than whiskey, and more than beer, and even more than coffee, that is wine.
Ooh, coffee.
Yes, even more than coffee, believe it or not. That wine is the essence of physical pleasure, and when the Almighty is critical of us for getting too involved in the physical world, meaning where it is not that we control the bottle, but the bottle controls us, it is people that are just addicted to the wine. This appears in the prophets. What do we do with the physical? We elevate it. And this is really an introduction to our Jewish mission. Be involved in the world, right? Get out there, do things, have an impact, but be mindful and use it the appropriate way. So you are a Goy Kadosh, you are a holy nation, and then we hear the Aseret HaDibrot. So too in the beginning of this week's portion, we have Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor, tell the people of Israel, Daber al kol adat b'nei Israel. You know what? On page 656. You're going to go ahead and speak to the entire assembly. These are fundamental teachings here. Because you will find Aseret HaDibrot. Ve'amarta alehem, and tell them that Kedoshim to you got to be holy. And by doing so, you are linked. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem to God. Now, there are going to be variations. When I say that you will find the 10 sayings, they will appear in a different form. And there's a good reason why they are not just given in their very specific form. You know, we have to be careful. The biggest threat to Judaism is when Judaism becomes like a rain dance. In other words, when we just believe that we do specific things, and then we have good. Right? You do A, B, C, and everything works out. Judaism, of course, is much more than that. And therefore, when you have the chief of the Indian tribe telling them one day do it one way, and another day doing it a different way, the variation would indicate that this is not something that is set in stone. It's not like a bunch of buttons you push and you're a good Jew. There's more to it. Okay, that's the idea behind it. But before we get into specifics, you know, it's important in life to know what is considered the main use of something and when is it secondary. Right? Take any of the mitzvos. Is this really the core of what Judaism wants? Or rather, this is a mean to something else. You know, imagine you have, not an old age home, a retirement home. A retirement home, what they used to call 40 years ago, what would you call it then? A Moshev Zkenim. But not anymore, now it's a retirement home. So you have a retirement home. And after breakfast, you have people moving on to the next room, right? For exercise, they come to the next room and they sit down and they turn on the TV. Right? So the Olam comes in, they're with their walkers, and they sit down and they start flipping the tech channels. And this is a moshel. And now they come to a specific channel and there is Wimbledon, a tennis match. So they're sitting there, they're watching. And then one of the older gentlemen calls out, "Wow, that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant." And they turn to him and they ask him, what exactly is brilliant? And he says, listen, it is quite impressive that they figured out how to play a game with the walker balls. Right? I mean, you have those balls that are designated for the walker, and here you have, they figured out how to play a professional game with it. That is actually brilliant. Okay. Now, Message, of course, is understand very well what is considered a core, its main use, and what is considered secondary. This is something that is very, very important in Judaism, right? And this is going to be, in many ways, the theme of what this portion is about. Remember what is considered the essence of Judaism. So look at the first verse. Here we go. The first verse. You've got to be holy. How are you supposed to be holy? Verse 3. Ish imo ve'aviv tira'u. Now in the Aseret HaDibrot, it appears not with fear, don't fear your parents, but rather honor your parents. In the Aseret HaDibrot, it first mentions the father then the mother. Here it is the mother then the father. There are reasons for it. But here we are told, Ish imo ve'aviv tira'u, ve'ed shabtotai tishmaru, and observe my Shabbat, I am God. Now this must be some kind of introduction. It must be an introduction. Be holy, honor your parents, observe the Shabbat, recognize that I am God. So one authority writes that Ibn Ezra notes that it really is talking about the development of a child. Who does the child get to know first? Right? First the mother, right? Then, I'm still waiting, the father, right? The child, when they call, hi, where's mom? Right? I'm waiting. Eventually, that's what I hear. That's what tradition teaches. Then the father. And then, the $75. And then afterwards, Shabbat. And that is true, that when it comes to a child, take a 2-year-old at home, the first mitzvah that they can actually relate to is the day, that special day, when the food is different or better, more exciting, eating in the dining room, whatever it is. So Ibn Ezra points out that this is a verse that's talking about a progression. Imo, Aviv, Shabbat. Fine, nice insight. However, you could actually see this verse as an introduction because the essence of a decent person is an appreciative person. It's really the core. You appreciate what is given to you, you're a good person. A person that is lacking appreciation, so a bitter life is waiting for them, and a bitter life is waiting for all those around them. We know that. Right? We interact with people. And we have to have, number one, appreciation towards our parents. Imo ve'aviv. Our parents were here because of our parents, and existence is valuable. So let's appreciate the ones who placed us here on this planet. But then we have to be appreciative of God, who created this world. In what way does the Jew show that he recognizes that there is a creator? Right? What identifies us as a Jew that recognizes the relationship we have with the God of Israel? Obviously, it's the Shabbat. It's an amazing thing how we have so many mitzvot. And the first question that is asked, when another rabbi or another rabbi wanting to know, they want to bury a person in a cemetery. The cemetery has rules and regulations. They want to be sure it's a Torah Jew. What's the one question they ask? Is he Shomer Shabbos? That's it. Shomer Shabbos? That's it. It seems to really define, because Shabbat is recognizing the fact that this is not a random world. There's a creator. If there's a creator, let's appreciate this wonderful gift of life and of existence. So this is really the introduction. You want to be a quote-unquote a Kedoshim, utilize the world in an appropriate way. It starts off with parents and God. That's that. So this is how we can understand verse 3. Now, you're dealing with a society that lives in a pagan world. And paganism is something they were fighting on a daily basis. They still were carrying pagan traditions. So here we go and look, the next verse, verse 4. We are warned here. Al tifnu el ha'elilim. This is a warning here in verse 4. Do not turn to the idols. Elil come from the word lot. Ve'elohei masechal, these molten gods. Lo tasulachem. Now, why is this warning number 2? So, obviously, avodah zarah is what is the first thing we have to purge from our mindset. But there's more to it. Rav Hirsch points out there were 2 types of pagan forces that were worshipped. The gods of no, right? and the protective gods. There were things that people would not do because it's a bad omen. Like this past Friday when we counted Omer. So someone would ask you what day it is. So you would say it's Friday the 13th of the Omer. Right? And so obviously we've been impacted by society that when you say Friday the 13th, what do people think? Stay home, be careful, right? So these are the gods of no's. And there's a whole list of things not to do. The rabbis tell us that when a person would start their day, and if their bread would fall from their hand, they would just stay home. Not a good day to go out, because we got one of the no's. This is one of the it's a bad omen. It's a bad sign. People are very concerned about, the bad signs of things.
Does Yetzer Hara fall into that? I mean, not Yetzer Hara, the Ayin Hara.
I know, there could it could be. We could address in what areas it does appear in our tradition, in what ways it's a complete meshugas. But you have to be very careful not to let those no's prevent you from doing good. Right? A person wants to go ahead and do an act of kindness, and then some superstition is giving them their elilim, elilo. Right? Those are the letters that appear. The El, the God of Al. Alta says it. Don't do this, don't do that. That's a God number one that you have to purge. And the next one is the God that protects you. Masecha, right, is something that's poor, but it's a mask too, and it comes, the word schach relates to it as well. The protecting God. All you got to do to be safe is you put on that red string. Put on the red string, you're a safe person, right? All you got to do is, kiss the mezuzah 3 times, and then you could drive 120 miles an hour because you are protected, right? So these are the gods of Masecha. That's not Judaism. That Judaism is, right? Yes, we have in our traditions. We'll address perhaps in what circumstances these irrational things do play a role, but that's not what Judaism is. Judaism is, or our values, we'll see what Judaism is about, but this is number one for that generation. Get rid of the gods of no and the gods that protect you. That's not your journey. That's what we are being told. And now, verse number 5, which again, extremely significant for the message of the engaged Jew. The Jew that is doing what's the greatest mitzvah of all, is the mitzvah for humanity. It's called Yishuv HaOlam, settling the world. This is the will, the greatest will of God is that the world is settled. And anyone that is involved in an industry, right, that helps the world is fulfilling the will of God. It's not just a Jew. Anyone that's involved, it could be in the industry, it could be from computers to medicine to law to accountants to restaurant owners, all of them I think are covered, most people in businessmen, psychiatrists, they are being involved in Yishuv HaOlam. You are settling the world. That's the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A real estate, I don't forget that. There's no greater Yishuv HaOlam. That doesn't even have to be said. Real estate agents. Right? In the plural. You are involved in Yishuv HaOlam, settling the world. Now, you own a casino, I wouldn't say that. No one can tell me that a casino is considered essential for the welfare of society. Did I get into trouble with anyone?
What about retired people?
Yishuv HaOlam, that is the mitzvah.
What about retired people?
That's
So
what
now,
I just said to Rolf.
so what we are being told here is that as you begin this journey of recognizing your mission, we're being told in verse 5, when you go ahead and offer a feast offering, be sure that this is done, keyword here, lir tzon chem. It should be done to find favor. It should be ratzon. And the rabbis tell us that this is teaching us that when you are involved in the service in the temple or bringing an offering to the temple, be sure that it is done with mindfulness. Ratzon is will, but there's mindfulness. Be aware of what you are doing. In other words, do not just do it believing that it's like pushing a button. I'm a good person, I brought a sacrifice. I'm a good person, I did the mitzvah. There has to be mindfulness, especially when you are bringing things that are korbanot, especially when you are involved in things that are not rational. Don't just do it imitating a pagan practice that you're going to satisfy the gods. There must be ratzon, there must be mindfulness. Okay, this is what we are being told. And we're going to contrast it, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. If you look at verse 9, verse 9 tells us that when you go ahead, you reap the harvest of your land, you have to be sure to leave a corner for the poor, the gleanings of also for the poor. And in verse 10, a similar idea, but in the vineyard. You're not going to go ahead and pick the undeveloped twigs of the vineyard, fallen fruit. Leave it for the poor. Leave it for those who are in need. And here the rabbis tell us that even though you are fulfilling a mitzvah with absolutely no intention, when I am working my fields and I leave things and I forget things, and the poor man comes and sustains himself and his family, even though I have no idea that it is occurring, there is no mindfulness at all, that is considered a good deed. So what the Torah is doing here is contrasting. When it comes to sacrifices, they are only meaningful if you are mindful of what you are doing. We have to ask ourselves, what exactly should you be mindful of? When it comes to acts of charity, they are valuable as they are. They are just good. You are doing good. You're doing tzedakah. You're helping others. Even if you are not aware of it at all, you are doing good. And what's the idea behind it? So, this past Shabbat was the first Shabbat after Pesach. And I make reference when we had a Pirkei Avot upstairs to people wondering about the Shlissel Challah. The Shlissel Challah. Now, what is the Shlissel Challah?
Christian.
The Shlissel Challah is a tradition that some Hasidic communities have, that on the first Shabbos after Pesach, you either make a challah that is in the shape of a key, or you put a key in the challah itself, right? That's what I hear. I don't do it, so I'm just telling you from what I hear. Okay, I don't have that tradition. So the question is, how should we approach it? In other words, we are being told, and it's even mefurish on Facebook, that if you do it, you get a bracha in Parnasa, that this is going to bring blessing upon you. Right? So what should I do it or not? They didn't say that on Facebook.
Isn't the background Christian?
Okay. Now, some would say, what do you mean it has a Christian background? Well, Easter, the cross, the key, St. Peter, all these good zachen that we have that make some of us cringe. Now, you ask me what to do with it or not. So let me tell you what I would answer. I would say the following. If you are doing it because you go to a specific shtibel, and the Rebbe in that shtibel does it, and he is a person who does a lot of kindness. He's a very kind and warm person. He's welcoming. He does acts of charity. He prays and teaches Torah with kavanah. And you want to connect to that individual. You want to be a disciple of his. And he does it as well, meaning this becomes a mean for you to connect to this individual and do good. Do it. If your master does it and you are inspired, 100%. If you are not connected to such an individual, but rather you're sitting there on your computer Thursday last week, and someone posts on Facebook, do it, and they put pictures of it, right? And there's a link to a bakery where you could buy it for $25, and you say, you know what? They say there's a blessing for Parnasa, so why not try it? That is something you should not do, right? And it borders on paganism if you don't have a tradition. Why? Because that is not rational. You only do irrational things, right, with lir tzorchem, with the intention that it is to connect you to something greater. It's not a goal, it is a mean. When they would bring korbanot, it was not, and this was something that the prophets were fighting day in and day out. Do not bring these sacrifices to the temple, believing that you are blessed. I brought a sacrifice, I'm a blessed man. That is not Judaism. Judaism is you bring a sacrifice, and you spend time with righteous individuals, with Kohanim, who were inspirational individuals, who prayed with kavanah and did acts of charity and were concerned for the welfare of others and for the welfare of humanity. If it is part of a package, if it connects you, right, and there is mindfulness while you are doing it, it has its place. If there's no mindfulness, it has no role at all. It is something that could be quite problematic. On the other hand, things that are the essence of Judaism, doing good to the world, being concerned for the welfare of those who are in need, even with zero mindfulness, even if I am not aware at all that part of my grain, my grapes, my wheat was left for the poor, that is wonderful, because that is intrinsically good. This is what we're being told. And therefore the Torah contrasts here. Korbanot, be mindful of it. Tzedakah, don't be mindful of it because you're doing good. It is good. You are doing good. There's an incredible pasuk in Mishlei where we are told the following. That aseh or aset tzedakah mishpat, to do tzedakah, charity, mishpat, justice, nivchar laHashem is far more beloved, or it's beloved to God, mizevach, from korbanot. This is, again, you have a society that korbanot were everything for them. Right? A person would celebrate, I finally can bring the korban to Yerushalayim. Nice! But remember, that is not the goal of Judaism. It's a mean. And obviously, in those periods, there were people where it dominated the korbanot. And people were just focusing on the mean. And in some ways, they became like pagans. That is a dangerous Judaism. That we are being told, you want to be Kedoshim, you have to see the big picture of what it's about. So that's why it's being contrasted here. The two of them are being contrasted here. Now, we're going to move. There are many things you could focus on this pasuk, but let's move on to page 660 and verse 16, Tet Zayin. We're in an era of growth overall. In other words, if you take the Judaism we are familiar with, and you look at the past 200 years, we've refined it significantly. Really, in other words, there's a lot of talk is often about how in the olden days everything was perfect. In the Al Tehaim, everyone got along, right? Everyone was always happy in the Al Tehaim. There were never issues. There were no fights. And here, the Yeridas Haderes, generations are declining. That's what's often taught. The reality is that Judaism has had very significant improvements over the past 200 years. Significant ones. And I give a lot of credit. I give a lot of credit to several, but one of the parties involved is the Musar movement, the mindfulness movement. People who tell you don't just practice your Judaism, be mindful of what Judaism is about. Okay, so when you would look sometimes at literature of the middle of the 19th century, and you would see rabbis getting into a fight on an issue. Perfect example was the machine matzah fight in the 1850s. And you look at the language used by these rabbis as they are arguing their point, it's shocking. Right? Our scroll would never translate what was written in the 1850s because these were very harsh words and harsh insults. And when I read it, I ask myself, how is it that rabbis act in such a way? And nowadays, in general, believe it or not, this would not occur. On that level of rabbinic scholarship, you wouldn't find it. There is an improvement. That's what I believe. And I give credit to this mindfulness movement. In other words, yes, you want to defend tradition, and you want to be sure that everyone fulfills the mitzvah appropriately, but you're dealing with a human being. Sensitivity, overcome that natural tendency. There is an improvement that the Musar movement has gained. Now, among the areas where there has been improvement is the area of Lashon Hara. It's talked about very much, that you have to be careful what you say about others. It always existed in Judaism. It appears in the Talmud. But the first time that someone sat down and put together a book, and he compiled all the information as it relates to Lashon Hara, what could, what shouldn't be said, what could be said, what has to be said, when it could be said, when it should be said, and in what way, was Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen, the Chafetz Chaim. An incredible work, an incredible individual, and there's an awareness since then. There's even an organization out of Monsey. It's called the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. And they've done a lot of nice things in the areas of education and videos. No question, there has been improvement, and I give credit to this mindfulness era. But you know how it works with almost anything, that when there's a lot of emphasis on one thing, your scale needs some kind of adjustment, an important adjustment. And there are times, and I can tell you from personal experiences, of people who with very good intention have this cloud of this warning of Lashon Hara on their head, fail in a different area of Judaism. And what do I mean by that? So verse 16 here. Verse 16, Lo telech rachil be'amecha. Right, to go ahead and be a gossip monger among your people is something you shouldn't do. Right? And it's obvious, you have information, not everything has to be said. You know something about someone, you keep it to yourself. However, what happens when, and we've discussed this here, when you have information of someone, of a teacher who's not acting in an appropriate way, or you have information about an employee who simply has no clue what he is doing, right? Or when it comes to the Shidduch, it's in the exact same verse where we are told, what are we told here? Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa ani Hashem. Meaning, you are not to stand by when someone else's blood is shed. And that's what you do when you get that call. When I get that call, and I'm asked a question about so-and-so, and I know very well that if I just say he's a very nice person, right, there could be, right, careers destroyed, lives destroyed. I suddenly have this tremendous responsibility of yes saying. It's in the exact same verse. If Judaism for you is only this pagan thing that I don't talk, right, I lock myself up in a closet and I don't talk, then you could develop this tendency of not saying what you should. If you understand, you have to be engaged, and engaged means you have to know reality, you have to know personalities, right? That, too much righteousness could be a problem as well. There's an interesting story that Ramosha Feinstein, right, once got a call from someone, and this individual started cursing him out. You're clueless, you don't know what you're doing, right? You're too lenient in so many areas. He was very, very harsh with Ramosha. No one enjoys getting criticized. Fine. A few months later, the same individual comes to Ramosha Feinstein, and he says to him, "Hi, I became a shaykhet, and I need Kabbalah, in other words, a document to prove that you're a qualified shochet is that you go to a rabbi. He checks to see that you actually know how to slaughter and how to smoothen a knife, and the rabbi gives you a Kabbalah." So this individual, right, who was very harsh on Ramosha Feinstein, comes to Ramosha and asks him for a Kabbalah. So Ramosha tests him and writes him a beautiful letter. Now, Ramosha did it because he was a tzaddik. In other words, in Ramosha's mind, he insulted me, but I should overcome a natural tendency, what I think everyone else would do, would tell him to go fly a kite. Ramosha Feinstein, as a tzaddik, gave him the Kabbalah. Fine. Now, a few weeks later, Ramosha is sitting next to Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky is a very wise man. And Ramosha would share with him a little bit about, he felt it was an opportunity to share some stories about himself. So he says to Rav Yaakov, "You got to hear, I merited to overcome a natural tendency." And he shares with him the whole story. And Rav Yaakov says to him, "Big mistake, you shouldn't have given him Kabbalah. If he's a person that can be so nasty to you, so then a shochet is supposed to communicate with the rabbi. You could have situations where the rabbi could tell him that perhaps what you did is incorrect. A person with such a personality shouldn't be getting Kabbalah." Now, this is a Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky's ability to always see things from the big picture. The righteousness of Ramosha, which he was, right, was in some ways the problem. We have to be careful, right? Al tiyet tzaddik harbeh, as we are told. There are times that you have to use common sense, what yes to say, what not to say. Now, it's a very challenging situation when you are asked, when I get a question from someone about someone else, but I know that which I share, right, even though it's necessary, will be told to 150 people, then I have a situation there where I can't not share with them the information, but at the same time, I cannot share with them the information, because then it's going to go way beyond its limits, right? So what do? If you have any good ideas, you can tell me. But this is from the more challenging situations of this verse, this one verse that shares with us the great challenge of all. One more verse I would like to focus on to give you the idea of what it's about. So here we go. Verse 17. Lo And this is what makes us kadosh, by the way. Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. Do not hate your brother in your heart, but rather, someone does something wrong, what do you do? Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. Go ahead and
Criticize?
or you
Oh,
rebuke.
no, it's a rebuke.
Rebuke the individual. But as Rashi points out, even when you rebuke, do it with common sense, not to go ahead and bear sin because of it. V'lo tisa alav chet. Don't rebuke him in a way that you will cause him to get angry. React in a way that causes far more tsaris than benefits. Now look carefully here. We're talking about me, right? Don't hate the fellow Jew, but rather rebuke, guide. That's what rebuke is. Guide the fellow Jew. Now, the verse itself shifts from achicha to amitecha. Right? When it comes to the hatred, we are told, lo tisna et achicha, your brother. But when it comes to the rebuke, it shifts to amitecha. Same idea, friend, but why the shift? Why the shift? So now, the word achicha is where it's an ach. Brothers and sisters, we're all brothers and sisters. To hate another brother and sister never has any place. There's no room for it in Judaism. To hate another Jew is not part of Judaism. It's a brother and a sister. It's your ach, it's your achot. Hatred never. But then comes the question, I see someone doing something wrong. Do I criticize them or not? So then you have to ask yourself, are they with you? Are they with you on this matter? In other words, I go ahead and I see another Jew walking into McDonald's. Right? So the question I have to ask myself is, are they, when you, in Hebrew, with im, ein mem, amitecha, is he with me? So if this is someone that I go to shul with, and I study with them many different issues, and I know that halachic Judaism and the laws of kashrut are very important, so then suddenly I have an obligation because they are imecha, they're with me. They're with me. So I have a responsibility of going over, not in a way to cause a fight, but to point out this is something that simply you shouldn't be doing. Right? McDonald's is not a place, let's go in for coffee, but it's not a place for, it's food that you should not be consuming because we are together. We see things the same way. But if it's a Jew that has absolutely no background, and if I tell them that kashrut is important, they'll say that's absurd, Judaism is about tikkun olam. In other words, we have no common language when it comes to this issue. To hate them, I can't hate them because they are my achicha. It's a brother and sister. Forget about hate. Hate has no place. There's no room for that. If criticize or not, or I shouldn't use that word, rebuke or not, mention it or not, then I ask myself the question, are they with me? Do they see the issue eye to eye? That's the question. That's piece of information number one that we are told, right? However, there's something else that's necessary. You have to be sure that when you are indeed rebuking someone else, it is because you want to work with them. Right? It's something that you feel you're working with it together. In other words, people have a tendency where they see someone doing something wrong, they can look down at them. They can look down at them, oh, that's wonderful, you can get a real boost from it. So I tell them, you're doing something wrong, I feel very good because I just made 2 declarations. You are doing something wrong and I'm doing something very right. You're not with them anymore. Right? You're with yourself basically. You want to feel good. You have to actually feel that this is something that's destructive to them. You have to feel just as if you would be putting your hand in fire. You don't want someone else to put their hand in fire. You don't want your soul to eat non-kosher. You don't want them to eat non-kosher. When you are really with them, then you could go ahead and do the hocheach tochiach. There's a story. There was a mashgiach in New York, I think Torah V'das, Rabbi Kaplan, who was traveling in a specific town, and at some point in Shachris was sitting when others have a minhag, or some have a minhag to stand. So after davening, a Jew walks over to him. He did not know him. They did not know one another. And the first thing he says, Shalom Aleichem, you should have been standing for Mizmor L'Soda. That was the first thing he did. So Rabbi Kaplan says to him, let me ask you a question. Why didn't you ask me where I'm eating breakfast today? In other words, you have never seen me. It's very possible that I'm here and I don't know where to eat breakfast. So the first question, if you are really concerned about my welfare, if you are really with me, if you are really with me, that should have been your concern. If you're concerned for my breakfast, you have the right to concern about my spiritual development, that I was sitting when you are supposed to perhaps stand. Then it has place. But to go ahead and make a statement where you are not with individual, you are with yourself, getting that ego boost. I can look down at him. Then there is no room at all for rebuke. And therefore the verse tells us that sometimes, unfortunately, when you're not careful, it leads to hatred and chet. This is a message, and hopefully we can learn something from Parashat Kedoshim. Thank you again to the sponsor. Next week, 11:50 for a 40-minute class. Everyone have a good day.